When we begin to understand biblical prophecy, what's about to happen next is going to affect the whole planet Earth. We lost our land, our culture, and our identity. There is a great awakening amongst the scattered tribes, and now we must return to the covenant of our forefathers. The Father chose out of all nations the nation of Israel. Okay, shalom, shalom, boker tov to everyone. I want to thank you once again, as always, taking time out of your busy schedule to join me this early. I know it is very early in the morning for us, but I needed to get this done. If not now, it might take another 2 weeks with my availability. But once again, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy schedule to join your brother Kassad here. And we're going to be talking about, I believe, something very important pertaining to oral Torah and what was the Mashiach's take on it. But before we get the ball rolling, let's go ahead and do the Father's prayer in the Brit. We're going to do it in English as we do in all of our classes, making sure that we give proper respect and honor to the Creator of all things. Abinu, Shabbat Shamayim, Yit Kudas Shimka, Oyit Barak Melkutka, Retsunka Yahiye Ishui. Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut At Ain, Lat Menu, Tamadit, Umakul Lanu, Kata'atenu, Ka Asher Anaknu, Mukhalim, U Al Tabi Ainu Layide, Nasayon, U Sham Ranu, Makal Ra Aimei. Now we're going to do it in English, Mr. Kas, so we can have clarity and making sure that we give proper respect and honor to the Father. Our Father, which art in heaven, set apart be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, we pray that you give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, Father, from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and once again, all esteem. When I say all esteem belongs to the Father. And we thank him for sending his Son, Yahushua Ha'Mashiach, who is the atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel, period. All right, period. That's how I do it. It's the Mashiyach or nothing. The Mashiyach versus the oral tradition. And we're going to be taking a real good look at what is actually going on during the first century as the Mashiyach of the first century, who I believe now is sent by the Father to make sure that Israel understands the true path of righteousness. If there's any discrepancy, my argument here this morning, if there's any discrepancy with anything, let's see what the Mashiyach had to say about it. It is my argument that the Mashiyach is the master teacher. Once again, Yahushua HaMashiach, who was called in many tones, Jesus, Yahushua, Yahushua. I'm not arguing that here today. The Mashiach of the first century is, was, and always will be that master teacher. So, Mishpachar, we have Mashiach versus Shebial Pei, which means oral Torah. We're going to be looking into oral Torah, the Mashiach versus oral Torah. So I just want to say peace and blessings to the family. I pray that everyone has an exceptional day and the rest of the week. Well, family, I've been talking to a couple of brothers about a couple of topics that I've been trying to dive into. It's just that there's been so much going on in Israel today. I was going to tackle the name. There's a brother that I know by the name of Elder Rakah from GOCC. We pretty much had our beginnings from the very beginning. Back in I came in 1992. I believe he came in about 1991 or 1990. He now leads a congregation called GOCC, and I think he made some big time blunders with his understanding of Ahaya Ashar Ahaya, as he says. I was going to tackle that. Then I had to complete my other lesson of Genesis or Bereshit, the 22nd chapter, the Melchizedek order, and how that pertains to Abraham and Isaac. And now I find myself here, all right, oral Torah. So this long-awaited presentation is finally here. Ha'Mashiach versus oral tradition. And I'm going to be beginning around 627 BC to present, all right? Beginning around 627 BC to present, with particulars focusing on the era 1st century AD, okay? With particulars focusing on the era 1st century AD. The main subject matter is Yahushua HaMashiach, who is the atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. And not just the nation of Israel. It is my argument also that even if the other nations want to understand the Hebraic perspective and the redemption of the nation of Israel, and being that every knee shall bow, it is my argument that it was Israel's responsibility from the very beginning to be the light for the other nations. Now, what prompted me to do this presentation is the use of the word rabbi, right? What prompts me to do this presentation is the use of the word rabbi that has been circulating in our community since the early to mid 60s, from my perspective, all right? When I say my perspective, from the time that I came into the walk in 1992, and where I come from, all right? Everybody has a beginning. Where I come from, I began to hear about from my father, and not my imam, but my father so much. He was more into the whole thing with Martin Luther King and Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad. Now, not too much even Elijah Muhammad, but he was more so into that whole thing there. But back in 1992, there was a man by the name of Rabbi Abba Bivens, all right? Rabbi Abba Bivens, who had a strong influence on the Hebrew Israelites as we see today. And for the record, Rabbi Abba Bivens was very familiar with biblical Hebrew, all right? I want to make that understood. Biblical Hebrew. The first time I came across rabbis was back in about 1994, 93 or 94, when just given location, okay, because I like to give proof to every single thing that I'm doing. I was in Newark, all right, right off of Elizabeth Avenue. It was between Meeker Avenue, and I believe that was actually down Chancellor Avenue, where I seen a few of us, all right, going into this synagogue, and they was dressed as I was calling it in that Abraham Lincoln looking garment, okay, with the big black hat, the white shirt, the blazer, the black blazer, the black pants. We know that whole look there. So come to find out that those are, I guess, Orthodox Jews. And so that's when I began to get a little bit more familiar with the word rabbi, and trying to figure out what were they doing versus what we were doing on 125th Street. So then came the oral Torah. So the question is, what connection does or did it have around 627 BC surrounding Yahushua HaMashiach? So again, the question is, what connection does or did it have around 627 BC surrounding the Mashiach's coming because 627 BC, that puts us around the time of Jeremiah. Now, I also want to share with the Mishpachah where I'm getting my information, all right? What I'm going to be doing here this morning, Mishpachah, is giving out a lot of information historically, what's been going on, and I want to show what we call proof text. I don't want to just say anything and I have nothing to back it up. Kohen or Kochin, Hebrew, Matthew. I believe everybody should know right about now that some years ago, and it was first brought to my attention by Michael Rule, Nehemi Gordon, Lamont Yahuah, who is also very responsible for keeping me on a straight and narrow with the Hebrew language. After he himself spent about 2 years in Israel studying the language, so he's very fluent with the whole language. So he's like my go-to guy whenever I have any questions, anything like that, as far as the language is concerned. But the Kohen Hebrew, Matthew, some of the places where I'm getting my information from. Now, the Kohen Hebrew Matthew is a copy of the Hebrew Gospel written by the Apostle Matthew. Okay, we'll leave that there for now. This Hebrew manuscript exhibits great promise as it contains the Hebrew grammar of the late Second Temple to include Mishnaic Hebrew with Aramaism. So, like I've been sharing, because I've been doing a lot of skits, these little pop-up videos on Facebook. And I've been posting these just to let everybody know where I'm at. It is my argument here this morning that it's imperative. I can no longer take no for an answer. The Hebrew language in the culture is vital. It is very important. To read scripture and not know how to parse out the particular verse in Hebrew, I believe that you're doing yourself a very big disfavor, because I can't see how, when you begin to read the next couple of verses to complete your chapter, you can actually come up with a Hebraic understanding of that particular chapter without reading it in Hebrew. For some odd reason, our people are stuck on the King James Version Bible only. Now, I do read the King James Version Bible. I read the NIV. I like to do a lot of comparisons, all right, to see what scripts are saying. But it is my argument that the Hebrew language is very important. So when I begin to see brothers and sisters make final conclusions on whatever thing that they're doing, and if it's not based upon you reading the Hebrew language, not just one word, all right, I need for our people to understand reading every word, parsing out every word in that verse throughout all of your scripts that you're going to be bringing out to present your argument, that it is all being read in Hebrew, so that we can now see exactly where you're coming from, those of us that are really putting both feet in understanding scripture. So, for it is believed that in the first century of Judea, the Talmudim, which are the disciples, spoke rabbinic Hebrew, all right, with a subset of rabbinic Hebrew representing in the Mishnah called Mishnaic Hebrew. For in the first century, after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, and for the following couple of centuries, Mishnaic Hebrew was used, and it was also included in the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, in a lot of religions, it's taboo. All right. When I began to study and see what was the the ideology of rabbinicalism, if that's a word. The Dead Sea Scrolls is one of those things that, you know what, they don't really want to give their stamp of approval on. They don't want to rock like that. Nope, we're not going to do that. So they have issues with, and I'm not saying all of them, but for the most part, they have issues with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the reason why I believe, based upon my research, and I'm going to be sharing here this morning, is because of the Melchizedek order and how those in the Qumran community who were Zadokites, they were not Essenes, they were Zadokites. Zadokites. The word Essene does not present itself as of date. The word Essene is not in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were Zadokites. Those were the true religious or rabbinical, I'm not even going to say rabbinical, those were the true priests during the time of the first century. All right. So I want to be real careful with everything, because I know that sometimes folks can dissect things and all that stuff like that. So I just want to make sure everything is crystal clear. The Dead Sea Scrolls is a problem for the rabbinical community. The book of Jubilees is a problem, and the book of Hebrews is a problem. And so this is the reason why I have been sharing the Mashiyach that came during the first century will not, I'm going to say it a second time, will not, and I'm going to share it a third time, will not share his stage with the rabbinical priesthood. That whole Levitical priesthood, he will not share it. The ultimate priesthood is the Melchizedek priesthood and not the Levitical priesthood. And I'm going to share why I'm so adamant with that. So the grammar at Kochi Matthews contains a striking difference in the writing style of this letter that brings a deeper meaning to what is believed could be the original words by the Apostle Matthew. And to the far left, we have some stuff here, okay? I'm not able to read that scribble scrabble, but what I have been able to do is blow some things up, look at a few things, and I want to share with the Mishpachah what I have this morning. Now, I don't have these particular scripts here, but I want to share something with the family. For what I'm hearing, when I listen to this whole thing with rabbis, the rabbi said this, the rabbi said that, oral tradition says this, oral tradition says that. I get it. I understand oral tradition. I do. I'm not knocking the whole thing off the bus. That's not what I'm doing. But there are some particulars that I have issues with, and some of the things I've just been hearing, it really makes me nauseous, where there are people that are believing so much in the oral tradition and still trying to hang on to the Mashiyach at the same time. And it doesn't work like that. Watch this. We're going to go to the book of John. This is one of the scriptures that was abused in the early 90s, late 90s, and even to this day. We're going to read the book of John, the 8th chapter, verse 44. And I don't even believe that a lot of the rabbinical hardcore believers really understand it. They might read it, but it's not digesting inside of their subconscious to understand exactly what does this mean. In the book of John, the 8th chapter, I'm going to read verse 44. Now, this is the Mashiach's ministry. He is now on stage, and he's having a conversation with the religious leaders in Jerusalem at that time, which were the Pharisees. Watch how he addresses the Pharisees, the religious leaders who were supposed to have been the religious governing body of Israel during the first century. Let's see how the Mashiyach addresses now the religious leaders of the first century. John 8:44. Ye are of your father the adversary, the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. Now, the adversary, the devil, for he was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. I'm arguing that the Mashiyach is sharing in a derogatory way. It can't get no cleaner than this. These guys were idiots, dum-dums. And I'm being light with it. The religious leaders during the first century, in case you didn't know, you better make sure you paid proper homage to the Pharisees. The Pharisees were looked at as gods. Gods. They had on their big, beautiful tunics, all dolled up with the big fringes, all of the jewelry. These guys were looked at as, wow, here comes a Pharisee. Don't let it be now the Kohen HaKadosh, the high priest. Heaven and hell stop for them, or for him, which at this particular time would have been Caiaphas. But here you have, I'm arguing that the Mashiyach is sharing with his audience that these guys, their works were of the devil. Even Yahuah the Immerser, who I have been arguing for over 15 years, came from Damascus. And the word Damascus is a code word for the Qumran community. Even John the Baptist called them a generation of vipers, devils, snakes. That's who you are. What brings you here? Again, what I found interesting is when I began to do this research and trying to recreate a scene that happened over 2,000 years ago wasn't easy. I have so much information, and the reason why it took me so long to do this, I had to decide what to put in and what to take out. So basically what I'm doing is sharing with the Mishpachai here this morning. At least I'm trying to point to you what direction I'm going at here. I can't see how. Folks can't see that the Mashiyach had a very serious problem with the Pharisees of the first century. And it didn't begin with the first century. Let's read on here now a little bit, all right? Let's also now go to another scripture that's been misconstrued, not broken down properly. John 8:44 rise along with Revelation 2:9. I know thy works and thy tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blaspheming of them which say they are Yahudims and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. I'm arguing that John 8:44 rise right along with 2:9 and also 3:9. Behold, I will make of them of the synagogue of Satan, which say, this is Revelation 3:9, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Yahudims and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them come and worship thee, before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. If we closely examine the New Testament writings, when we begin to look at what actually happened after the death of the Mashiyach, as he sends his Talmudim out to share with Israel, both northern and southern kingdom, that the Redeemer had arrived and had redeemed them through his blood and not through animal sacrificing. Some of the biggest adversaries that was causing a glitch or trying to uproot what the disciples were doing were the scribes and the Pharisees. They were the problem. You know what? Let's read on. All right, let's read on. I talked about 627 BC. I want to go to the book of Yahuah, Jeremiah 8:8. Watch this. How, which is a question, do you say we are wise? Let's parse that out. Obviously, a person would have to read the whole book of Jeremiah, or at least read Jeremiah, the 8th chapter, to see exactly what's going on. I know what's going on. The who is a question, do you say, or how do you say we are wise? He is talking about the religious leaders in Jerusalem who were given the commission to govern the people righteously. Because remember, something is about to happen to the nation of Israel if they don't get their sugar, honey, iced tea together. How do you say we are wise and Torah, or the law of Yahuah or Yahweh is with us? Lo, certainly in vain made he, it has in parentheses or in brackets here, it. Look at that for a minute. And the law of the sovereign is with us? No, certainly in vain made he it. What is he talking about? And then it goes on to talk about the pen of the scribes is vain. My question is, looking at verse 8, Jeremiah 8:8, who here is writing what we know today to be rabbinical enactments? Who is doing this? Who is perverting? Now, again, let me back up. I'm not saying that the word rabbi was being used at this time. What I'm trying to do is to go backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. But the whole thing here now is that this is pertaining to the religious leaders. Because if they don't get their thing together, guess who's knocking at the door to chastise Israel? The Babylonians. Someone is writing indictments changing the original purpose or definition explaining the 10. Someone is causing the people to err in their understanding of Torah. And based upon what I have so far, it began with Jeremiah sharing with the people, listen, if you don't understand teshuvah, shuv, repentance and returning, Babylon is coming. Now, the wise men are ashamed, they are dismayed and taken. Lo, they have rejected Torah, the word, devar, of the sovereign. And what wisdom is in them? Watch this. How is it that Jeremiah can make such a claim. Remember, Jeremiah was a priest, meaning that Jeremiah had opportunity. He was privy to reading the Torah. And when he read it, and with the divine intervention, because the Father called him, hey, listen, Jeremiah, I need for you to stir the pot, because these guys are not teaching Torah. And I'm going to demonstrate here this morning that during the first century, the Pharisees were not teaching Torah. They were not teaching Torah at all. Watch this. Because of their disobedience, and how who's at fault in all of this is the rabbinic. Let me back up here a little bit, because this is 627 BC. Are the religious leaders who were given the authority. If you're going to sit in Moses' seat, then you must do the things that the Torah teaches us to do, because Moses did explain it. Watch this now. Therefore will I give their wives unto others, their fields to them that shall inherit them, for everyone from the least even to the greatest. He's talking about the religious leaders. In case you missed it, therefore will I give their wives unto others, their fields to them that shall inherit them. For everyone from the least even to the greatest is given into covetousness. From the prophet even unto the priest, everyone dealeth falsely. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. I don't want to hear no more. I'm making the claim. I'm making the announcement. I don't want to hear nothing else about the white man did this, the China man. Listen, these things are happening to us, rightfully so. See, I'm going to have to get dirty with you so-called Negroes, myself included. Meaning this, you don't know the severity, the punishment for breaking the covenant. To break a covenant? Those of us that know Torah, do you really know the repercussions of breaking Torah? Listen, you bet it would be easier for you to break a covenant with one another. But at Mount Sinai, and I believe that we are the descendants of those people, to break a covenant with the sovereign, you think that's cool? And there'll be no repercussions behind it? So in other words, collectively as a body, we didn't learn our lesson under the Babylonian captivity. Our easiest captivity, because we were still under captivity under the Medo-Persian Empire, because they were the next metal to rule, or the next beast to rule. But the Father said, listen, let me do it like this. I'm going to give you damn Negroes one more chance. 70 years. You need to get yourselves together. You're going to come out of the Babylonian captivity. And then after that, I need for you guys to really get it together. So you had that opportunity, or we had that opportunity during the Persian Empire. But what happened? Listen to me closely. Listen to me closely. That was short-lived. Short-lived. As Daniel said it would be. Because the next metal to come up was who? The Greeks. Alexander the Greek. The gold, the silver, the brass. The metals become weaker in value, but more intense in punishment for the nation of Israel. So, Israel didn't learn her lesson under the Babylonians. Given a stay of execution, let's give them another opportunity during the Medo-Persian Empire. That was short-lived. Now, let's whip them again. Let's whip them again under the Greeks. That wasn't enough. Let's whip them again under the Romans. And that wasn't enough. And my argument is, here we are today, June the 28th, 2026. I am still faulting, holding at fault here, the religious leaders who are not pushing the Mashiyach solely. Okay. If your foundation, if your teachings is not surrounding the Melchizedek order, the Mashiyach, Yahushua Ha'Mashiach, I don't care who you are or who it is, we can't build. We could talk about a whole bunch of stuff. That's cool. But you know what? For me and others who are on standby, Kasad, if you have any questions, any problems, you know what? Anybody wants to go to war, I got your back with you, brother. But you go out, sound the alarm, shots fired, whatever you want to call it. But there are a group of brothers that's saying, listen, you know what? It's either the Mashiyach or nothing. That's where we're at right now. Zephaniah, the 3rd chapter, verses 1-3. Woe to her that is filthy and polluted, to the oppressing city, Jerusalem, the religious leaders again. Woe to her that is filthy and polluted, to the oppressing city. Those are some very harsh terms. As the religious leaders are, so are the people, because the people are looking up to the religious leaders. Come on now. Here we go again. Verse 2. She obeyeth not the voice. She receiveth not correction. She trusteth not in the sovereign. She, Israel, draw not near to her husband, Elohim. The head honcho over the Elohim, the gods, is, I teach, is the Mashiyach. He is the Yahuah over the Elohim. He is any other way is considered a thief and a robber. Watch this now. The religious leaders, which are her princes, her teachers, they are like roaring lions. Her princes, her judges are even wolves. They gnaw not the bones till the morrow. Greedy. They rob the people. During the time of Zephaniah, Jeremiah, and they were off the chain during the first century. Robbing, raping, perverting the people and Torah. Her prophets are light and treacherous persons. Her priests have polluted the sanctuary. They have done violence to Torah. You're not supposed to add or take anything away from Torah. Salvation is through the 10. The Mashiyach explained that. You love the Most High with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might. That pertains to the first 4 of the 10. The last 6 pertains to how we deal with one another. So when the gentleman asked in the New Testament, how do I now get eternal life? You love the Most High with all your heart and all your soul. And the second is like the first, because you are now supposed to love your brethren as yourself. This became a major issue where this was not happening because somebody was perverting the writings. Let's move on. Historical context of Jeremiah's criticism of the religious leaders during the 6th century. Jeremiah's criticism of the religious leaders, priests, and prophets stemmed from Judah's moral decline and the looming threat of the Babylonian Empire operating from 627 BC until after the fall of Jerusalem. He condemned the elite for ritualistic hypocrisy, greed, and preaching false peace while society devolved into idolatry and oppression. That happened under the governing-ship of the prophets, the priests, the elders. They were all in bed together. They raped and robbed the people, and they perverted Torah, the lying pen of the scribes. And what do you do with pen? With the pen, you implement enactments now that has nothing to do with Torah. And that's what they were doing. The geopolitical crisis. During the late 7th century and the early 6th century, the ancient Near East was in upheaval. The Assyrian Empire was collapsing, and a newly dominant Babylon, led by Nebuchadnezzar, was expanding its control over the region. Judah found itself caught in the middle, pressured to either rebel or submit to Babylon's dominance. Now, we know that Northern Kingdom went into captivity under the Assyrians in 721 BC. So I also share the captivities this way, but Daniel's vision that he got from Gabriel, there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfect. But we know it goes from the Assyrians, the Babylonians, because the Assyrians took Northern Kingdom. So you have the Assyrians, Babylonians, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, the Romans, and I'm still arguing today that we are still living under Roman oppression. I truly believe that. Let's move on. Core criticisms against religious leaders. Core criticisms against religious leaders. One sec. Yahuah, Jeremiah's most severe rebukes targeted the establishment, including the priests and prophets operating within the temple, preaching peace during crisis. As Babylon repeatedly besieged Jerusalem, the religious elite promised unconditional divine protection and prosperity because they were under this illusion, delusion, whatever you want to call it, that there is no way in the world the Father would have the enemy, the adversary, to destroy the temple. And so they would use this phrase, the temple, the temple, the temple, the temple. We could do anything that we want to do as if you had the Father by the gonads. We can do whatever it is that we want to do because the people was entrusted to us. Jerusalem is the place where the Father placed his name at, and the Father would never have the Babylonians come and destroy Jerusalem. Let's read on. Proclaiming peace and peace when none existed, Jeremiah condemned them as false prophets who placated the kings and ignored the moral mandates of the covenant. Who placated the kings and ignored the moral mandates of the covenant. Institutional hypocrisy. Priests and prophets regularly emphasized, watch this now, priests and prophets. This is 627 BC. I'm not talking about during the time of the Mashiyach right now. Priests and prophets regularly emphasized outward sacrifices and reliance on the temple for security, while simultaneously ignoring the Torah's moral demands. Jeremiah criticized them for oppressing the vulnerable, taking bribes, and indulging in immoral practices. Did you know during Jeremiah's time, and even during the first century, that these priests were involved in illicit sexual behavior like orgies? Were you aware of that? These men will wipe their mouths and then sit up in a synagogue and try to profess how righteous they were. And you think, well, they thought that the Father was going to turn a blind eye to all of that? All right, let's see. Okay, we have Mishpat.
I just had a quick question.
Yes, sir.
You are saying that this is referring to the Pharisees or the rabbis, correct?
Right here now, at this particular time here, they were not called. I have not found any information that Jeremiah, Zechariah was calling these guys rabbis, but I simply call them the religious leaders who had the control in monitoring and making sure that the people stayed all right. These were the religious leaders. These were Levites.
So, but you are connecting them, like as we go down the timeline, to the Pharisees. Like the Pharisees are the off branch of them, is what I was asking.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, let me make that clear. The Levitical priesthood that was set up after Israel broke the original reason why they were supposed to have been at Mount Sinai in the first place, and we now have the Levitical priesthood in play, during the time of Jeremiah, those religious leaders were of the Aaronic Levitical priesthood. When we get now to the first century, those guys are in an extension of those guys during the 6th century BC. This is the reason why I brought out earlier the choice words that John the Baptist had towards the religious leaders that was living in Jerusalem. He called them derogatory terms. Meaning now, just by John the Baptist calling them a generation of vipers, that alone was fighting words that could have led to John the Baptist's death, just by him disrespecting the priesthood. Even when the Mashiyach was being questioned by Caiaphas, and the Mashiyach answered them not a word, what happened? Punched, slapped, beat the crap out of the Mashiyach. Don't you hear that the priests are talking to you? That you're not going to open your mouth when the priests are talking to you? I'm going to hold up my hand and ball up my fist. And this is what happened. That's what they did. It was the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the first century, who was responsible, who handed Mashiyach over, the Redeemer of the nation of Israel, to the Romans and whooped the dog crap, and back up here a little bit, and beat the crap out of the Mashiyach. Like I have been explaining over and over again. Greater is the penalty on those that handed me over to the Romans. How do we escape that? It's almost like sometimes I hear people now taking their fingers and putting it in their ear and they skate over that. Oh, I don't want to hear that part. I don't want to hear that part. But according to the writings, that's what happened. Let's address the reason why we're here. It is because of the religious leaders. And don't even get me started on what happened from 1992 to the year 2000 when I was part of that whole group where the Pharisees now was still operating on 125th Street. I have some nightmare stories, and those stories now are they're in comparison to what was happening during 627 BC and what was happening during the first century, doing the same thing, and it is still happening today. Let's speed it up here a little bit. Watch this. Syncretism and idolatry. Despite prior religious reforms by King Josiah, the society and its leaders readily adopted pagan, fertility, and foreign religious practices, which Jeremiah viewed as spiritual adultery and unfaithfulness to the sovereign. The temple sermon, in one of the most infamous condemnations, Jeremiah the 7th chapter, Jeremiah warned the worshipers gathered at the temple that their reliance on the physical structure for safety would fail. Watch this now. If anybody knows history, if anybody knows and have read the writings of Josephus, what were those lion-ass priests doing when Jerusalem was being besieged by the Romans? And when they finally came into the city, they still had this same ideology. The temple, the temple, the temple, the temple, the temple. When they came in, they were still inside of the temple, begging and pleading, believing that the Romans would not overtake Jerusalem because of the temple. And when you backtrack to 627 BCE, it was the same thing. The temple, the temple, the temple. The Father won't do this because this is the temple. This is the place where he placed his name. I'm trying to share the same crap, the same mindset that was going on in 627 BC, where Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians, overtook Jerusalem finally. Then the next Babylon, because Rome is Babylon, it happened all over again because the priests were relying on the temple. He compared the situation to the ancient destruction of Shiloh, warning that God would allow Jerusalem and its temple to be destroyed because of widespread oppression and the shedding of innocent blood. Reading is an art. Understanding history. What were these lying Pharisees, these lying religious leaders doing? Because once again, we can't escape the fact that John the Baptist had a distaste for those guys, and that's the reason why the Qumran community separated themselves from those idiots. They separated themselves from them. And I'm going to show proof of that. Let's now go to the next slide. Repercussions for the prophet Jeremiah for obeying the sovereign. Now, let's see how the religious leaders in the 6th century treated Jeremiah for obeying or being obedient to the sovereign. Because his message essentially framed the Babylonian invasion as divine judgment. And it is amazing how, when we look at Babylon during the 6th century and we look at Babylon during the 1st century, they don't believe that that was divine judgment against Israel. Think about that for a minute. When the Romans besieged Jerusalem, beginning around 66 AD, with the final conquering around 70 AD, that was divine judgment. Watch this now. That was right divine judgment. Right divine judgment. And all of this happened because of the lying pen of the scribes and the Pharisees, the hypocrisy that was going on in Israel. If we truly want to know who's to blame, take a look in the mirror. You. It is mentioned that Israel was supposed to have been a royal priesthood. I chose you above all nations. Out of all nations, I chose the nation of Israel. And look how the nation of Israel has decimated, has cracked, made a bowel movement on the covenant that the Father made with the nation of Israel. Because his message essentially framed the Babylonian invasion as divine judgment, Jeremiah was frequently labeled a traitor and a false prophet. And that's what happens. If you speak out against rabbinical teachings, the way that it was being done during the first century, you're a traitor. You're a false prophet. What you're saying makes no sense. That's the way that it's viewed. The Mashiyach was looked at as a traitor, a false prophet. And so was Jeremiah, so was Peter, and all of the other disciples. Traitors. Because they were not advocating the rabbinical priesthood during the first century. You need to slaughter a goat and bulls and all this other stuff that we used to do under the Levitical order. That thing came to an end. Not slaughtering no animals for remission of sins. The Mashiyach is our Passover. Let's read this thing here. The religious establishment called for his execution, and he was violently persecuted, beaten, and placed in stocks or thrown in a cistern. And it was I believe, an Ethiopian that pulled Jeremiah out of a pit of doo-doo. Who did this? The religious leaders, those that were in authority during the 6th century. It wasn't the Romans. It wasn't the Babylonians. It wasn't the Greeks. It wasn't the Romans. None of these guys. It was people that looked just like you and I. You're the problem. We collectively as the people, we're the problem. His counsel to submit and surrender to Babylon was deeply unpopular. Unpopular. And if anybody understands the works of Josephus, it had made mention that signs was given to the nation of Israel. And the number varies, but those doors that shut everybody in, it would take at least 6 men. Some said 8, meaning 4 men on one side of the door, 4 men on the other side, or 3 men on one side and 3 men on the other side to actually close the gate. But for some odd reason, the doors would just fling open by themselves. They were told that that was an omen, that was a sign that the Father had enough of the nation of Israel. I had enough of that whore. I had enough of that slut. Had enough. The religious leaders caused the people to err. Don't even let me get into now the allotted time of 490 years. Slide number 12. Who was privy to the Torah scrolls of Moses? Again, who was privy to the Torah scrolls of Moses? Mishpachah, please be aware and understand that the Torah scrolls were not widely owned by ordinary citizens during Jeremiah's time. As mass printing press did not exist. However, historical and biblical evidence shows that custody of the scrolls was shared between priests, royal scribes, and government officials, rather than being exclusive to the priests. I was shocked to find out that people thought today in our community that common folk was walking around with the Torah. No. You got the opportunity to hear the Torah on the Shabbat. During the 7th month, you will hear the rules and regulations on how the whole thing works, especially during the 7th month. But not everybody was privy to that. The common folks would just stand there hoping, believing, and trusting that the Pharisees and the religious leaders were saying what they were saying under divine revelation to the people. That's what they believed. Not the way that we have it now. There were no laptops. People didn't have Bibles. People wasn't walking around with Torah scrolls. They didn't have that. Please pay very close attention. Please be aware and understand that the Torah scrolls were not widely owned by ordinary citizens during Jeremiah's time, and not even during the time of the 1st century. Come on. As mass printing presses did not exist, however, historical and biblical evidence shows that custody of the scrolls, again, was shared between priests, royal scribes, and government officials, rather than being exclusive to the priests. And being that it was exclusive to only these folks here, this is, again, where we begin to have the lying pen of the scribes. What is the lying pen of the scribes? We need to understand what were these rabbinical enactments. We need to know what were they changing, removing, because these guys were filthy rich. They oppressed the people during the 6th century, during the time when Israel came out of the Babylonian captivity. They began to oppress the people again. During the Greeks, they oppressed the people again. And during the time of the Romans, they oppressed the people. Listen, I don't think Israel, I don't think we're reading. I really don't. I'm talking about collectively. Let's see. Let me go back here.
It look like you skipped the slide. There you go.
Yeah. Were there teachers of Torah outside of the Pharisees' synagogue in the 1st century? This is the question. Were there teachers of Torah outside of the Pharisees' synagogue in the 1st century? And the answer is yes. In the 1st century, the Pharisees did not hold a monopoly on teaching the Torah. While they were the most prominent popular educators, various other factions, scholars, and independent figures taught the law, the Torah, operating in entirely different settings. These teachers and institutions included the Sadducees, who were primarily in the Jerusalem temple. These were the priestly aristocrats. They taught and strictly enforced the written Torah alongside their own interpretations, holding their judicial authority through the Sanhedrin. There's now the Zadokites. This elite community retreated to isolated settlements like the Qumran near the Dead Sea. They rigorously studied and taught the Torah according to their own strict rules and messianic expectations, very distant from the mainstream Pharisees' synagogues. I was shocked to find out that there was brothers, big-time teachers, who believed that the only ones that was teaching Torah during the first century were the Pharisees. There were so many splinter groups that was against the Pharisees. Let me just read it, okay? Independent rabbis and sages, many respected scholars and independent teachers who were experts in the law, called sepharim or scribes, were not in alignment with Pharisaical or Pharisaic institutions. So what I'm sharing here this morning, Mishpachah, is that just as you see it today in Babylon, it's the same thing that was going on in Jerusalem during the first century. I'm not gonna name these groups like that, but there's ABC group. We got the truth. There's CD group, that group, this group, that group down there. We got it. No, you got it. You better come get it from us. If you don't get it from us, you're going to hell. The same thing is happening. But this is the only difference now. I believe if a person truly understood that the Levitical priesthood is not the perfect will of the Father. I'm arguing that when Moses got his divine encounter, with the burning bush that was not consumed by fire, that was Mount Sinai. That event happened at Mount Sinai. Moses brought the people to that same mountain to make a covenant with the children of Israel. Meaning now is this, he was like the mediator. He was the best man going up and down, having this conversation, making sure that the people now was coming under the right divine order, because Moses was both what? Acting as both king and priest. A Levite can't be king and priest. Has no one thought about why Moses had more authority than Aaron? Even before the sin with the golden calf? Why was Moses so important? I'm gonna throw this out here. I'm gonna throw this out here. I'm just reading something here. I don't even understand this. At Brenda Bean Ford. What is that? I'll check that out later. What I found interesting is that one of many demonstrations of the Melchizedek order in what Moses was thinking, because Moses was no dummy. Moses was a super scholar, and the sovereign told Aaron and his sister, Miriam, listen, don't play with me. Bring Aaron and Miriam, outside the camp. I need to talk to you for a minute. All right? I need to talk to you. When I talk to Moses, pani, face to face, that is pretty much the closest that you can get to me. How dare you speak against Moses? That's my man. And when you had the situation where Aaron led the people astray because of his weakness, it was someone greater than Aaron that stepped in and watched this to make an atonement for the nation of Israel in the wilderness. Moses never said, I'm going to offer up bullocks, lamb, goats, turtle doves, chickens, whatever. None of that. Moses demonstrated the Melchizedek order by saying, blot me out. Take me out to preserve the nation of Israel. That is the office of a priest. The Melchizedek order. Nobody thought about, why didn't Moses say, I'm going to throw up a bull and a goat and a ram and a billy goat and this? No, he didn't do that. No greater love than a man have other than this, which is the Melchizedek order, that a man would give his life for his friend. Not a goat, not a... Guys, stop it. Okay, really, stop it. The Mashiyach said, I don't care what nobody says. Rambam, Gamaliel, Hillel, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. If your foundation, whether you live before, during, or after the Mashiyach, if your foundation isn't 10 toes down on the Mashiyach, listen, he says some nice things, then that's fine. But how are you dealing with the Mashiyach? There's no other way. How are you dealing with the Mashiyach is my argument. You're like, damn, Kasai, you're like that with the Mashiyach? Yes, like that. That's how I am. Independent rabbis and sages, many respected scholars and independent teachers who were experts in the law called Sopharim or scribes were not in alignment with Pharisaic or Pharisaical institutions. They simply were not. During the first century, anybody that claimed the Mashiyach was banned from the synagogue. Watch again. I'm going to say it again. During the first century, those lion-ass Pharisees put out the decree. Anybody now pushing this idea and this thought of the Mashiyach, guess what? You're banned from the synagogue. They asked a woman about her son. Was he blind from birth? Because he's claiming that somebody healed him. The woman said, well, you know, he's a grown man. Ask him yourself. People were afraid to be put out of the synagogue because they believed that these Pharisees were God incarnated. And the only way that you can receive everlasting life would be through these teachings, the Tanak of the Pharisees, they believed that. And there's some people today they believe that. Some people still believe that. Let's read on. Let's read on. Let's read. Let's read on. Let's read on. The Zealots, which is another group. This militant group taught a strict interpretation of the Torah, emphasizing that God was the only true ruler of Israel, which justified their violent opposition to Roman occupation. And we also have the Zealots. We have Sakari, which was another group. They called themselves daggermen. So whenever there was like this big mass gathering, these men were known for their dagger shape, or the tall, excuse me. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Powell. I was looking at something here. These men will go through these large gatherings and actually now begin to stab the men that were not in alignment with them in their religious beliefs, because they believed that they needed to dispose of anyone, even priests who were in bed with the Romans. And everybody knows that the Romans were, that the Pharisees was in bed with the Romans. That's no great mystery there. I know everybody has to know that. 5, the Messianic movement. This group, excuse me, Mr. McCarr. I'm looking at, no, the Book of Jubilees is actually in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'm a strong advocate of that. I'm just reading this right quick here. Okay. The Messianic movement. This group followed the strict understanding that that the Mashiyach was both king and priest, and that becomes a problem. I had even brought this out at one point. I don't need to mention any names. That the Mashiyach was both king and priest, and that his position was far superior than the Levitical priesthood. And I was told that, well, that's questionable. Not for me. Not for me. Okay, the Messianic movement, this group followed the strict understanding that the Mashiyach YAHUSHA was both king and priest, the promised one according to the Old Testament teachings. Figures like Yehukanan the Immerser, as well as the Mashiyach himself, traveled outside of formal synagogue structures. They taught Torah, also reinterpreting the false eisegesis, mainly by the scribes and Pharisees. Again, they taught Torah, also reinterpreting the false eisegesis, mainly by the scribes and Pharisees. The Mashiyach and his disciples gathered their membership in public settings like hills, the Jordan River, and the temple courts. All right. Let's move on. Ha'Mashiach verse oral Torah. Ha'Mashiach verse Torah. Somebody had their hand up? Something keeps coming. I think somebody's trying to come in. If somebody wants to come in, please, by all means, ask your question. Why do I feel as strong as I do what we're having with this discussion that we're having here?
No, the question in the chat was from Mikael. He just said, what do you mean by eisegesis?
There's exegesis and eisegesis. Exegesis, let's go ahead. Eisegesis now where we begin to now lean on our own understanding in parsing out scripture. Take, for example, when I went to Israel, it was when I was out in Israel, this was in 2017, in order for a person to go through the channels of wanting to live in Israel, And there's a lot of different groups out there. I was out in Netanya. That's where I was at for almost 10 days. You had to now, you could not adhere to the Mashiyach. They're not trying to hear that. And if you were already circumcised, they had this thought and this idea, and it became an enactment that a priest now, because they ask you a whole bunch of questions. Why you want to come to Israel? Do you understand the rules and regulations here? In the process now, there's one particular brother that was trying to go over there. It took him a year. And after the year was up, they came back and said it's a no-go. But what they wanted him to do now was to pull down his pants and then have an Orthodox Jew look at his penis. And even if he was circumcised, he would take a sterile needle or a sterile pen and prick his penis. And now that it was done rightfully by a rabbi, he now has a circumcision. I'm like, wow, really? And I remember in scripture, and I do understand when Shaul is having this whole conversation about circumcision, and I do believe in circumcision. But at the same time, I also understand that Abraham, for example, was called in circumcision, or did he have a physical circumcision in the penis? No, but he was still called. But was he circumcised in heart? Yes. When the Pharisees were trying to set out these rules and regulations about the Gentiles, how they can come in, and they were making this big deal about circumcision, Shaul even went out on a limb because this thing had become so bad. For an example, with circumcision, I'm talking about eisegesis, a person leaning upon their own understanding on how to interpret scripture. And this is what the Pharisees were doing during the 6th century, because again, Jeremiah 8:8, what were they doing? And they were also doing the same thing during the time of the Mashiyach. And I'm going to share that. And so what happens now is that Paul said, you guys that are so big on circumcision, just cut the whole damn thing off then. If your salvation is predicated on circumcision, cut the whole penis off. I'm getting sick and tired of this. Because they were so much involved in the outer appearance that they forgot their inner man. You were full of dead men's bones. That's the proper way how the Mashiyach described the religious leaders during the 1st century. When Jeremiah states that the lying pen of the scribes worked falsehood, and I have it in caps, when Jeremiah states that the lying pen of the scribes worked falsehood, I'm asking the question again, what do you do with a pen? Because it says the lying pen of the scribe worked falsehood. Jeremiah is attacking this very monopoly, which were the religious leaders during the 6th century. The scribes were writing false legal interpretation, decrees, and administrative rulings. They would issue written judgments claiming this is the official law of God. That's what they were doing.
I was going to say, because with a pen, you write.
Yeah, that's what you do with it. It's the same crap that they do here in America when you go to court. Every time we get ahead and we begin to understand the law, guess what they do? They change it. They change it. And again, I'm not against oral tradition. There are things that not my great grandfather, but my grandfather would share with my Father, and my Father shared it with me, and I hold those things to be evident, and I'm teaching those traditions now to my children. I was about to say something, but I'm on
Well,
YouTube.
I'll wait to the end to add my points into that.
Okay, lying pen of the scribes, they work falsehood. Jeremiah is attacking the very monopoly. The scribes were writing false legal interpretation, decrees, and administrative rulings that would issue written judgments claiming that this is the official law of God, knowing the common people had no way to read a scroll and verify the claim. Because they were the only ones that was privy to the scrolls. It's the same thing that they was doing during the time of Catholicism. What the Catholics were doing, and we begin to talk about the 10 horns, and then this little horn, and what this other little horn was able to do, and we look at these 10 barbarian nations. That's my position, but I don't want to go too far into that. But if during that era, if you were caught with a Bible, you were burned at the stake, you were whipped and beaten. They needed to have a monopoly and play this mind control over the people. And they would do this now by saying, this is the official law of God. I don't want to jump too ahead of myself. Okay. Total institutional corruption. Jeremiah repeatedly points out that the entire religious infrastructure was compromised from top to bottom. Just a few verses later in Jeremiah 8 and 10, Jeremiah summarizes the situation from the least to the greatest. All, Kaf Lamed, all are greedy for gain, Prophets and priests alike, all practice deceit. Read it again. Jeremiah 8 and 10. Jeremiah summarizes the situation from the least to the greatest. All are greedy for gain. Prophets and priests alike, all practice deceit. My research has brought me to the understanding that from 627 BC to the final collapse of Jerusalem in 70 AD was the result of the lying pen of the scribes and Pharisees. A prominent first century leader who believed in Ha'Mashiach was Nicodemus, a member of the Sanhedrin. He should also be noted. It should also be noted that Nicodemus defended the Mashiyach in council meetings and helped prepare his body for burial before Pesach. Joseph of Arimathea was a very wealthy and high-ranking member of the Sanhedrin. Shaul in 34 AD became a follower of Mashiyach on his way to Damascus, the Qumran community, looking to bring the believers back to Jerusalem to be persecuted. Gamaliel, the elder, while he did not convert from my findings or claim to believe in the Mashiyach, he was a high-ranking leader of the Sanhedrin council. He was a grandson of Hillel, who somewhat defended the disciples in Acts. Because, again, being that he was, a big man during the first century, and he began, I think it's in Acts, the 5th chapter, when it was brought to his attention, where he said, listen, be careful what you do to these men, or pretty much let the Most High handle it. Okay, because there's been many uprisings in Israel and they all came to naught. Leave them alone and let's just see what happens. And this is what I have been sharing with brethren, my take on Rabbi Gamaliel. And Shaul, relationship to Gamaliel, the elder, the rabbi. Did Gamaliel understand? Because he's a doctor. Gamaliel is a master teacher during the first century. But yet, he did not understand the book of Daniel 8, 9, and 10. Well, because what's going on with Daniel 8, 9, and 10? Did you forget that in the writings, it talks about the Kazon, 2,300 evenings and mornings, and it talked about the Moreh vision. It talks about two visions. One is the Moreh vision, and that Moreh vision is 490 years. And the other vision is talked about 2,300 evenings and mornings. But yet he's a master teacher, though. He didn't understand that? A master teacher who was cut off in the midst of the week, as described in the book of Daniel. Who was that? Why, if Paul, who was a Pharisee of Pharisees, who studied under him, but yet Paul was consenting to the death of Stephen. The true revealing or the proper understanding of Torah came when the Mashiyach shared with Paul. Paul, you're persecuting me. It is hard for you to kick against the pricks here. Hard. But where was Paul on his way to as he got letters of permission? Where did Paul get these letters of permission from? Wasn't it from the leaders in Jerusalem? To bring back believers in the Mashiyach bound in chains to be executed? Persecuted? Where did he get that idea from? And then you begin to look, when you do the math, when did the 490 years end? The 70 times 7. When did it end? When did it end? I'm arguing that it ended in 34 AD. Remember, pay very close attention to the vision. Without going into it, tell me the position of the Mashiyach when Stephen saw the vision. Gamaliel didn't understand that? Okay. Gamaliel the elder, while he did not convert or claim to believe. Somebody saying something.
Yahushua said when Stephen was stoned.
Right. But the question was, what was the posture of the Mashiyach? And I say this: sit now at my right hand until I make thy enemies thy footstool. The question is, what was the posture of the Mashiyach when Stephen saw the vision? That's another lesson. He was a high-ranking leader of the Sanhedrin Council. He was a grandson of Hillel who somewhat defended disciples at Acts. Here we go. Now, let's see, what does the Qumran community, who called the priest in Jerusalem the sons of darkness, let's see what they had to say. And I'm going to give you some scroll numbers. The Qumran scrolls in the New Testament share a similar view of the Pharisees, despite originating from entirely different religious movements. Both corpora were written by outside groups who viewed the Jerusalem religious establishment as corrupt, hypocritical, and spiritually blind. Qumran scrolls 4Q169 call the Pharisees the seekers of smooth things. Doreshe halakot. This is a derogatory wordplay on halakha, legal rulings. The Qumran community believed the Pharisees looked for legal loopholes to make the Torah easier to follow, effectively smoothing out Elohim's strict laws. I'm sending addresses. Mishpat, you have your hand up.
Yeah. When you talk about this right here, just because it's on the screen of 4Q169.
Yes, sir.
Talking about being seekers of smooth things.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, does that come into play with how they viewed the strict laws of the Shabbat? Because we'll see what the Messiah says, that you can help a man on the Shabbat. It's nothing wrong with healing somebody on the Shabbat and helping them. But in the Qumran community, you can't even save somebody out of water without it being seen as you're doing work. So I wonder if their outlook on people doing those things was them saying like they're seeking out a loophole or something, or being a seeker of smooth things, knowing that they would say that they can help a man on the Shabbat.
Right, and that's actually not going to be the comparison here on the second screen here.
Okay, my bad. I'll just wait to the end there.
No. We're good. As I'm reading some of these discrepancies that the Qumran community is having with the Pharisees, and even looking at some of the things that the Qumran community were doing, have me scratching my head also. But I will say this. If I had to choose a religious group to follow during that era, it would have been a follower of those of the Qumran community and not the Pharisees. And the reason why I say that is because I have not found any writings. Zero writings of the Mashiyach condemning the Qumran community, those that lived there. Not saying that they were picture perfect, because even when we go to the book of Revelation, the first chapter, it is my argument that all of these groups needed a little fine tuning. But the reason why the scriptures, when I say the scriptures, I'm talking about the New Testament writings, is homing in on the Pharisees, because they were the biggest culprits. They were shutting up the kingdom for others. Bro, that is a serious charge. And I'm arguing that people just gloss over it. You are causing people to go to hell. Why are we making light of that? Now, what we just read, Qumran scroll 4Q169 called the Pharisees the seekers of smooth things. This is a derogatory wordplay on halakha, legal rulings. The Qumran community believed the Pharisees looked for legal loopholes to make the Torah easier to follow, effectively smoothing out Elohim's strict laws. And another thing too, when we read the Dead Sea Scrolls, and this is like, I'm just going to touch on this. The reason why the Qumran community were behaving the way that they were behaving with these strict laws, because they understood that the time was at hand. The time at hand meaning what? They understood the coming of the Mashiyach, and there was going to be a regime change. They knew that. This is the reason why John the Baptist is saying what he's saying. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, referring to the Mashiyach. Nobody is meditating on the fact that the Mashiyach was not immersed by any of those idiots during the first century in Jerusalem. He was immersed by a Zadokite priest. John the Baptist's father was Zechariah of the 8th course of Abijah. The Mashiyach was immersed by John the Baptist, who did not live in Jerusalem. That's crucial. That's critical. And then you begin to see John the Baptist being very explicit in saying, this one that is coming, I'm not even worthy to unlash the laces of his sandal. And I know the difference between rabbinical enactments, takanot, ma'asim. I know the difference. Takanot, by the rabbis, you put one sandal on, put your right sandal on, don't tie it. Then put your left sandal on, don't tie it. Go back to your right foot, tie that sandal, then go back to the left foot and tie that sandal. I know the difference. On the next presentation that I do, I can show over 50 rabbinical enactments that was operating during the time of the Mashiyach. According to academia reports, history, and dates. Let me move on. We're now at 12 o'clock. New Testament, the book of Matthew, the 23rd chapter, and Mark, the 7th chapter. Watch this now. It similarly criticizes the Pharisees for creating human traditions that nullify the actual commandments of Elohim. Ha'Mashiach accused them of making religion an external burden, focusing on minor legal details while neglecting the weightier matters of the law. And you can find that in the book of Mashiyach YAHUSHA, the book of Matthew 23:23. Then it is also made mention where Israel, under the tutorship of the religious leaders, share with us smooth things. We don't really want to hear Torah. Tickle my ear. Tell me something good. Tell me that everything is going to be okay. everything is not going to be okay. During the first century, watch this now. The Mashiyach said, being that you did not understand the time of your redemption, I'm going to lay Jerusalem even with the ground. Oh, how I would have gathered you, but you did not understand the time of your visitation. That's Jubilee talk. That's Jubilee talk. The Mashiach goes to the synagogue and he begins to read. He begins to read about his coming, the acceptable year, which is Jubilee talk. But ask even the rabbis today, do they acknowledge the book of Jubilees? It's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And like I said, the book of Jubilees, that's like a red flag. I ain't rocking with it. Nope, 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 nope. Not the book of Jubilees, not the Dead Sea Scrolls, not the book of Hebrews. But let's go ahead on. Let's finish this up. Hypocrisy and false appearance in the Quran scrolls 4Q 266 to 273, Damascus documents, describes the Pharisees as those who build a wall and daub it with whitewash. This metaphor means they created an impressive looking barrier of traditions. Listen, only thing a person would have to do, I'm giving addresses here. I'm giving receipts. I'm giving addresses here. 4Q 266 to 273, the Damascus document describes the Pharisees as those who build a wall and daub it with whitewash. This metaphor means they created an impressive looking barrier of traditions, but the foundation underneath is spiritually hollow and rotten. Is this, yeah, I think this is about the end of the show here. And I'm going to have to elaborate more on this here. Ha'Mashiach's major contentions with the Pharisees. Mishpat and I, we've talked about this a little bit earlier, and I don't think I put that slide up. Dag, I did not put that slide up. Boy, let me see something. Did I put that slide up? No, I did not. Book of Mashiyach YAHUSHA, the 23rd chapter. How does this read? Then the Mashiyach spoke to the people and to his disciples, saying, upon the seat of Moses, the Pharisees and the sages sit. Now all which they, I have circled here, now all which they say to you, keep and do. But according to their ordinances and deeds do not do, because they say and do not. They demand and set forth great burdens, which the shoulder of men are not able to bear, but they themselves, even with their finger, are unwilling to move. Now, what I found interesting, Mr. Picard, is in the Shem Tov's Matthew, we have that a little bit different. We have in verse 3, we have the Wa, Atakal, Asher, Omer. I'm arguing that that yod that is placed in front of the Aleph Mem Resh Omer, that yod is sharing with the audience is that he spoke or he say. Just like if it was an Aleph, I will, yod, he will. The way that this is read in the Shem Tov's Matthew, Upon the seat of Moses, the Pharisees, the sages said, not all which he say to you to keep and do. I'm arguing that when you read this, it is not saying they, it's saying he. That Yod in the Shem Tov's Matthew, it says he will say. The he will say is referring to Moses, not what the Pharisees say, not what they're saying. So the way that this is to be understood is this way. Then the Mashiyach spoke to the people and to his disciples, saying, upon the seat of Moses, the Pharisees and the sages sit. They sit on this seat, but he's wanting and he's sharing with Israel that they should do the words of Moses and to keep those sayings and not do according to the ordinances and the deeds that the Pharisees are saying. Because when you go down to Matthew, the 23rd chapter, just the second verse, 10 verses down, it even helps the reader to understand what is actually going on in the book of, in the Shem Tov Matthew, that is now, what is actually going on to help support Matthew, the 23rd chapter. Let me just pull it up right quick. And I'm reading from the, this is coming from the Shem Tov's Matthew. Let me, hold on 1 second, Mr. Carr, because we're almost done and I could take some questions. Okay, that's not the one. One more second. Because I know I said I'm definitely going to do a part 2, because I definitely want to go into some more here. Darn it. I got it on my other records. Well, let's do 23. Let me see. Yeah, here it is. Matthew, the 23rd chapter. I'm going to start at all of Matthew, the 23rd chapter, is speaking against the Pharisees. All of it. Let me see. Let me stop. Okay, I'm starting at the 13th verse. I'm going to do some speed reading. I'm not going to just listen. 23. I'm starting at 13. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go in yourselves, neither suffer you them that are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, again, hypocrites! For you devour widows' houses, and for pretense make long prayer. Therefore you shall receive the greater damnation. Again, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, you make him, the one that you proselyte, which means converted, twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Again, woe unto you, you blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing. But whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. What are we doing with these scriptures here? Are these writings of the Mashiyach? You fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifieth the gold? And whosoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing. But whosoever shall swear by the gift that is upon it, he is guilty, or he is a debtor, or he is bound. You fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gift of the altar that sanctifieth the gift, which is the question, Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar sweareth by it, and by all things thereon. And whoso shall swear by the temple sweareth by it, and by him that dwelleth therein. Just a few more verses here. And he that shall swear by heaven sweareth by the throne of God, and by him that sitteth thereon. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint, anise, cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the Torah, judgment, mercy, faith. These ought you to have done, and not leave the other undone. You blind guides, which strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you may clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within thee are full of extortion and excess. That's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Thou blind Pharisees, clean first that which written, which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are likened to white sepulchres. This is in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are without full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness. Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Woe to, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I'm just surprised that more emphasis is not put on the corruption, the malice that was going on during the first century with its roots with Jeremiah in 627 BCE. And now, even Caiaphas made a bold statement where he condemned himself, being the high priest that year. Caiaphas now made mention that it is written in our law that someone was to come and to die for the nation, and not for this nation only, but to the nation that is scattered abroad, which is referring to Northern Kingdom. But in the same breath, these guys would say, listen, we got to cut this Mashiyach off, because you know what? We're getting paid here, bruh. We're getting paid. We're balling. We're rich. Let's cut him off. Let's cut him off, because we might lose our position, our sitting, our standings with the Romans. That's what Negroes did to the Mashiyach. I'm open for questions. Mr. Carr?
All right. I was gonna say, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead. You got it.
No, it's just that some of the I appreciate what you presented, but like some of the things that I was gonna say about it was I think the first scripture that you had brought up was John 8. And I always looked at that part in John 8 as he was addressing the Jews who believed on him, and not necessarily the Pharisees, when he was saying, you are of the devil. Because it says he was speaking to the Jews who believed on him. It wasn't focused on the Pharisees in that moment. And also with the Jeremiah 8.
Okay, back to John 8:44. Let me pull that up right quick. So you said that, who was he calling disagreeable? The devil again? Who did you believe that to be?
Where it says those who believed on him, from John 8:30 down.
Oh, 8:30?
Yeah, from right there, because he was addressing the Pharisees in the beginning part.
8:44 or 8:30?
I'm referencing 8:30 for 8:44.
Okay.
Which would go down to 8:30 and 8:31, because before then he was addressing the Pharisees. But then it says, as he spake these words, many believed on him. Then said Mashiyach to those Jews which believed on him. If you continue in my word, and then it goes down and says, they answered him, we are Abraham's seed. So then when they go down some more, it's like they answered him, Abraham is our father. And he was like, no, if Abraham is your father, you'll do this. And they said to him, we be not born of fornication, but we have one father, even Elohim. And he told them a couple verses down, you are of your father, the devil. The lust of your father will you do. And he was a murderer from the beginning, and so on and so forth. So I wasn't seeing that as addressing directly to the Pharisees, saying the Pharisees were of their father, the devil. But based on those who believed on him, their outlook on how being Abraham's seed was going to be their ticket to salvation. And also that same concept plays into when Yahushua the Immerser was addressing the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And with that, I'll say that because the Sadducees didn't believe in the oral tradition or the oral Torah. So when he was addressing them as bros and vipers, I see that's not based on the concept of an oral tradition or oral Torah, but based upon them as a person and the hypocrisy that both groups carried as living as they live, the hypocrisy that they carried while they live.
Okay. John 8:38. Let me see if I can follow along with you here. Who do you believe the Mashiyach is talking to here? Let's see. I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me because my word have no place in you. When the Mashiyach is having this conversation, I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me. Who is he referring to? Who was it that was seeking to kill him that he would make that statement?
I would say it was many that was trying to kill him because of how the situation played out. But I know
Who?
that you're referring. I said many that were trying to kill him.
Many?
Was it only one group that was trying to kill him at this time?
The main conspirators that was was responsible for killing the Mashiach was the Pharisees. Not saying that the Sadducees were excluded from it, but the high priest that year was a Pharisee, Caiaphas. And so the question then becomes now, who was responsible for turning over the Mashiach to, because it makes mention of, when you look at the book of Jeremiah 8 and 8, it talked about, it gave a list and how that list didn't change during the first century. It made mention of prophets, priests, the judges, all of them were in bed with the Romans at this particular point. But I was under the understanding when reading the New Testament, the Pharisees was the dominant group at that time. They were the head honchos. So when it says now, I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me. That was the Pharisees. There's many times where they had picked up stones to throw the stone of Mashiyach to death that he had to get up out of there. Scriptures teach us, or put it this way, the writings of the New Testament teaches us that the Pharisees worked with Judas for 30 pieces of silver when they besieged the Mashiach on the 14th. On the 14th, those were Pharisees. The Pharisees said they wanted to stone him to death, but not now because the festival was coming up. Those were Pharisees. What I found interesting is this. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, yes, they had different doctrines. I have not seen when it came down to now what to do with the Mashiyach, that they was in disagreement. The only one that showed somewhat of a concern was Gamaliel. These Pharisees, they were monsters. That's the reason why when I went to the book of Matthew, the 23rd chapter, it kept saying Pharisees, 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 and the scribes, Pharisees, 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 Pharisees. It kept saying it.
Take a side.
Yes, sir.
I'm listening to you, right? And it keep taking me back. I had put in the chat, but I keep going back to John 8:33, right? And he's saying they answered him, we be Abraham's seed and were never in bondage to any man. So when I hear that, I'm thinking, okay, whoever this is talking, they're saying they was never in bondage, but we know that up to this time, the children of Israel have been in many captivities. So I'm you see where I'm going?
Yes, I've heard that argument before. Yes. I was sharing with a brother, Brother Mikael. That religious system was so corrupt where the priesthood was available to the highest bidder. But yet people still want to push this Pharisee crap. It was for sale. There was not one particular ethnic group that was running with the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin. Because remember, Herod also called himself a Jew. Listen, they're called infiltrators. Just like there's infiltrators here today, and may the Most High bless them. I'm not pointing the fingers at anybody. And I will say it like this. During the 60s, when I was so-called political leaders, where you have Reverend Jesse Jackson, Colin Powell, and all of these guys here speaking up for black folks and stuff like that, it is rumored that a lot of those guys were spies. I'm not calling out any particular names. But what was happening now was that in order for Herod to keep a control and an eye on what was going on in Jerusalem, he had spies amongst the legal structure in Jerusalem, amongst the Pharisees.
Can I address that John 8 one more time?
Mm-hmm.
Just as you were reading and you were saying these things, the reason why I said that is because also in verse 48, it says, then answered the Jews and said unto him, these are the same Jews who believed on him. It says, then answered the Jews, because before everything is being specific about Pharisees. But right here it says the Jews who believed on him in 31, and then 48 says, then answered the Jews and said unto him, say we not well that you are a Samaritan and has a devil. I don't see that addressing the Pharisees, because it's also doubling down on how they felt, which is why he can say that your father is of the devil.
But why would he tell righteous Yahudims Why would
I
he have a
think it's the
conversation
same.
with them about being devils?
No, I think it's the
Watch
same
this now.
situation.
Watch it now. Let's read this down. Watch how this. Watch how this goes. I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me. And we was trying to establish throughout the Mashiach's history. We're talking about these last 3.5 years. The question would be, who was seeking to kill the Mashiach? I'm arguing the righteous Israelites who understood Bible prophecy and understood the redemptive role of the Mashiach were not seeking to kill the Mashiach. Even Peter himself, who was a Talmudim of the Mashiach, when the Mashiach said that he would be given over to the hands of those that would kill him. That's what he said. What do we do with that? I'm not making this up. Watch this. I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me because my word have no place in you. Who is the you? When we begin to look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the ones that did not have the consciousness of the Mashiach in him were the ones that were trying to kill him. Not Nicodemus, not Joseph of Arimathea, but the Caiaphas, that group. There was a group. Take, for example, when Caiaphas sent his disciples to ask John the Baptist, who are you and what authority do you have to be immersing people in the name of the Mashiach? Who the hell are you? Are you John the Baptist? Are you that one? Who are you? Are you Elijah? Who are you? Notice also that John the Baptist used derogatory terms to describe the Pharisees. Now watch how this, I'm talking about looking at the whole picture. Watch how this goes. I spoke that which I have seen with my Father, and you do that which you have seen with your father, which is the devil. The Mashiyach is speaking the words of the Father who sent him, while the religious leaders who were sitting in Moses' seat, the pen of the scribes who writeth these things in vain is worthless. These guys here now do that thing which is of their father. Now, they, which are the Pharisees, and said unto him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said, or the Mashiyach said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would have done the works of Abraham. The works of Abraham, the works of Abraham was faith, total obedience to the sovereign. The Pharisees was not doing that. Again, I speak to them, I speak that which I have seen with my father, personal, my father, and you do that which you have seen with your father. And we know that there's no capitals and there's no small letters here. But I just find it interesting. In the King James Version, they try to make a differentiation. They try to differentiate what is going on here. Father, as it pertains to the Mashiach, they have a capital F, and again, there are no capital letters in Hebrew. But I do want to make mention, which I do agree, to help the audience to understand the story. Sometimes you might have to put emphasis on a letter or a word. And you do that which you have seen with your father. They, who is the they? They answered and said unto him, Abraham is our father. Because the Pharisees were claiming to be of Abraham's seed. That's what they were doing. The Mashiach responds, Abraham, they said, the Mashiyach said to them, if, the operative word is if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. But now you seek to kill me. a man that told you the truth, which I have heard of God, this did not Abraham. Who is the Mashiyach fighting against? I'm arguing that he's fighting against those that were in a position of legal authority over the Jews. They were not teaching Torah. Then it goes on to say, but now you seek to kill me, a man that told you the truth, which I have heard of God. This did not Abraham. You, who is the you? The you can be used singular or plural because it's talking about a collective group. You could be talking to me, the head of the house, but now my children, my family, everybody else now is under my leadership. So as the king is, so are the people. So it says, you do the deeds of your father. Then said they, which is plural, to him, which is the Mashiyach, we be not born of fornication. We have one Father, even God. The Mashiyach said it to them, which is now plural, the same audience. Nothing has changed. The Mashiyach said it to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. When the Mashiyach was at the council before he died, and Caiaphas said, tell us who you are. This man blaspheming. This man makes himself equal with God. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. It was either Herod, I think it was Herod. Listen, because this lie, and this was a lie. Listen, Herod, I think it was Herod, if I'm not mistaken. His wife comes to him. Oh, I had a dream about this guy here. Make sure that you do nothing to him. And then now they go through this ritual. I believe it was Herod again now, not the Herod that killed the babies. This is a different Herod. He now goes through this ceremony. He washes his hands of the situation. He said he finds no just cause to kill this man. Well, if you let him go, then you are no friend of Caesar. This man has to be put to death. Who said that? I'm arguing that it was the Pharisees. These guys did that. If you don't judge him properly and put him to death. And then the arrogant ass Pharisees had the audacity to say, along with the people, because Herod said, well, who should I let go? Barabbas, the son of the father, or this here Jesus? No, Jesus. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Let the blood of Jesus be on us and our children. Who said that? The lion ass Pharisees. They did it. Watch, there's more. Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Even because you cannot hear my words. You are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, you believe me not. He's talking to the religious leaders. And because I tell you the truth, you believe me not. Which of you convinceth me of sin? Which one? Because you have a mini court scene going on here. And so the Mashiyach asks the question, which of you convinceth me of sin? And if I say the truth, why do you not believe me? He that is of God, hear God's words. You therefore hear them not, because you are not of God. Who is he talking to? Just random people? No. He's talking to the religious leaders at this time during the first century. Then it goes on. Then answered the Jews. The Jews are the Yahudim. The word Jews is pertaining to the religious leaders at that time, as you see in the New Testament. When I say the New Testament, after the death of the Mashiyach and the Talmudim begins to go out, one group is going to the Jews. The Jews means the religious leaders, and we will go to the Gentiles, meaning the people. Watch this now. Then answered the Jews and said unto him, say we not well, say we not well that thou art a Samaritan, which is a derogatory term. It has a devil. Jesus or the Mashiyach answered, I have not a devil, but I honor my Father, and you do dishonor me. And I seek not my own glory. There is one that seeketh and judges. Verily I say unto you, if a man keep, watch this now, if a man keep my sayings, he will never see death. Then said the Jews unto him, now we know that thou hast a devil. Abraham is dead and the prophets, and thou sayest, if a man keep my sayings, he will never taste death. Art thou greater than our father Abraham? This is going back again, reiterating to the audience that he's talking to the religious leaders. Art thou greater than our father Abraham, which is dead, and the prophets that are dead? Whom makest thou thyself? Watch this, Mashiyach, how he answers. The Mashiyach answered, if I honor myself, my honor is nothing. It is my Father that honoreth me, of whom you say that he is your God. Yet you have not known him, but I know him. And if I should say I know him not, I should be a liar like unto you. Those are fighting words. Your father Abraham, watch this now. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then said the Yahudim unto him, thou art not yet 50 years old, and thou hast seen Abraham? The Mashiyach said unto him, verily, verily I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. I am the great I am. The Exodus 3:15, I am that I am, I am he, I am the I am. That's what he was sharing with them. I am the one that Moses spoke of when he was asked, when I go to the children of Israel, who shall I shoot? When they ask me, who am I? This is what you should say. Ahaya Ashar Ehe Asher Ehe. And then he goes on to further say, the Yohevavhe. He is telling them that I am he, that I am before Abraham. Then took they, who is the they? Then they took up stones to cast at him. But the Mashiyach hid himself and went out of the temple. Who was in the temple? The temple was the responsibility of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The religious leaders at that time during the first century went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. So that's what I have. That is talking about the religious leaders. The Mashiyach is having a very intense conversation with them and telling them that they are of their fathers. The devil is who they are. You're liars, you're hypocrites. The story has not changed from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Pharisees were the leaders of the first century, and they were all devils, from the least of them to the greatest of them. All of them were devils. Until the ones that came out, like I said, like Joseph of Arimathea, and he had secret disciples, yes, excluding those guys. But if you're not following under Mashiyach all the way down, 10 toes down, listen, the Mashiyach has a problem with anybody that's trying to hold on to Levitical, rabbinical services here in 2026. Is what I'm gathering here.
Okay. And I don't know how much more time you have, but I did have like a couple more questions just based on the things that were stated.
Okay.
When we talking about the lying pen of the scribes, I think that's where, because we talked about it earlier, a pen being an instrument to write. So when there was no codification of the oral law or oral tradition. So those things that the scribes were at that time when they had the lying pen, I don't think that it has anything to do with the oral Torah or the oral tradition, being that that was all oral up until we get into the CE time period. Up until the end of the first century, second century, CE wasn't fully codified until like the 300s, around that time. So when we talk about the line scribes of the pens, those I thought that dealt with the scribes writing in things to support the kings at that time, like how they were taxing the people and doing things like that. They can write these things down. They can scribe those things down, write it down, when it's against the Torah to even charge your brother usury. So it's different things like that that I'm thinking that Jeremiah was referring to, and not the actual oral Torah or the oral tradition itself.
Okay.
Just, just saying that the line pen scribes didn't have anything to do with the oral Torah.
Okay. Let's check out something because again, there's a lot of information here.
Okay.
What we have here is a major, major problem. And me personally, I hold to the fact that beginning with Jeremiah, all the way to the first century, and even to present, this Pharisaical teachings of on how they deem salvation and redemption is false. Now, if a person wanted to take the pen literally or figuratively, is up to them. Now, another thing that was happening with oral Torah, one of the reasons why the Pharisees insisted on oral Torah because they wanted to teach the people themselves. It was all oral. It is believed, and I'm sure oral tradition would say, hey, listen, that's what oral tradition says, and we're going to rock with it. But I think it was Rabbi Judah in 200 AD, it is believed that he actually wrote down the oral Torah, because this is now after 70 AD, and it is believed that he wrote it down so that the future generations would know what oral Torah is. So it needs to be written down. But that is debated amongst scholars whether or not that actually happened or not. I am finding out in reading that Pharisees in rabbinical teachings today are using a lot of band-aids to try to clear up blatant problems to continue to preach and teach Phariseeism. Now, I'm also arguing, and I can bring the information out on this also. When Israel came out of the Babylonian captivity, and they were now setting up the Levitical priesthood all over again, they found inside of the temple ruins the scrolls. It makes mention, I think it was Ezra, who began about early morning to midday going over the Ten Commandments and also oral Torah, meaning now the explanation of the 10. Now, if he just spoke on just the 10, that wouldn't take 5 to 6 hours. But you had Ezra now reading the scrolls and giving an exegesis and not an eisegesis. What he was doing was reading the oral Torah based upon how it was originally supposed to have been understood. During the time of Jeremiah, and especially during the time of the first century, they were not doing that. And this is just a simple Google search. You don't have to buy the big expensive books. You don't have to buy that. Just take the time and Google. The readings of the Torah scrolls that Ezra read to the people, is it the same what the Pharisees were doing during the first century? And it's going to tell you no. Now, if a person now, because I'm not going to do it, I'll just read it and just download some of this stuff. And I got so much stuff that I got papers all over the place. The Pharisees during the time of Jeremiah, the Pharisees during the time of the Mashiyach. It is clear for me, and what becomes clear for me doesn't mean that it's clear for the next man or the next woman. I am reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Mashiyach has major issues with the religious leaders in Israel during the first century. And I don't even see how it can even get. See, to me, it's like listen. It was the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, that stoned Stephen. He was a disciple of the Mashiyach. Yeah. And it was Steph when he laid some charges against those religious leaders. Let me make sure I do this correctly. Those religious leaders that stopped their ears and said, "We heard enough of this guy Stephen." Some call him Stephen. I don't want to hear no more. Stone his ass to death. And they stoned him to death. And Stephen said the same thing that the Mashiyach said. Lay this charge not to their records. It was the Pharisees. Everything that I brought out, who was responsible for the killing of the Mashiyach? Who was responsible for the killing of Stephen? Who did the Mashiyach had issues with? Who was the Mashiyach always fighting with? It was the religious leaders. People that looked like you and I, who were trying to mix politics with religion. Those were the Pharisees. So I'll let you have Mishpachar. Oh no, I don't see anything else. Mishpachar, I'll let you if you can get up 3 more questions, if you have 3 more.
Okay.
I'll let you go ahead and ask your questions, and I'll try my best to answer them.
Okay, I'll just surmise what I was gonna say about the Jeremiah and the Zephaniah, because in those situations, and even with what John and Mashiyach was addressing was the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. He was addressing their hypocrisy. We see it in Jeremiah because it says, how can, I'm not saying that those are the Pharisees, but those at the time. I'm just linking it in based on how you had laid it out. Jeremiah was addressing those at that time for the hypocrisy within them. Zephaniah was addressing the hypocrisy that was within them, all the corruption that was going on. And then when you look at John, even in Matthew, I think it's Matthew 3:7, because you're bringing it up about the brood of vipers. In Matthew 3, let me see if that's here. In Matthew 3:7.
Hold on one quick second. One second.
Okay.
One quick. Okay, Miss Squad, my apologies.
No
You
problem.
got it.
Yeah, I was just going to say in Matthew 3:7, where it says, but when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees come to his baptism, he said unto them, O generation of vipers, who have warned you to flee from the wrath to come. And this right here, where we're talking about the oral tradition versus Mashiach, even with the context of what John is saying here, it's not, or well, I mentioned it earlier, it's not as if he's going at the oral tradition, because here he addresses the Pharisees and Sadducees. Once again, hypocrisy being addressed. And then he's only addressing these specific ones that shows up to him. Because I don't also think that to put all Pharisees in one group with each other, I wouldn't think that's a fair assessment either, to say that all the Pharisees are like this. And I think you mentioned that about Gamaliel and about Nicodemus. So when we're looking at that, we're just seeing that he's just talking about their hypocrisy is not going at the oral laws at all, or the oral Torah at all. Because even further down, he even addresses here, I'll just read 89. Bring forth, therefore, fruits meet for repentance, and think not to say within yourselves, we have Abraham to our father. For I say unto you that Elohim is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. So it seems here like he's not even addressing anything dealing with the oral Torah at all, but he's addressing us trying to hold on to being Abraham's seed as our safety net of being in the covenant, when it has nothing to do with that. Because as Mashiyach said, if you were of Abraham, you'll do as Abraham did. So we can't use us being as Abraham's seed as that safety net for us, but it's about being in a correct alignment. So I don't see nowhere where anybody, when they were addressing or even giving correction towards Pharisees through their hypocrisy, that they were condemning the oral tradition. And I'll let that sit right there, because I'll just tie it into the Matthew 23 that's on the screen also. So I'll wait till after this to tie that in.
Okay. When John the Baptist made the statement of that those group of men, a generation of vipers, who sent those men to ask John the Baptist, who was he? is my question for you.
Who sent him to ask who was he? Are you referring to when he was in jail? When he was in prison?
No, at the Jordan, at the baptism. Those when John the Baptist had called those particular men a generation of vipers and devils, who sent those men to question John the Baptist?
Maybe I'm missing. Does it mention it in this section right here, in this chapter right here? I don't see
the men had asked John the Baptist, we need to know who you are, because they needed a response to those that sent them. So my question was, who sent these men to inquire about John the Baptist?
Based on what you're saying, I would say it was whoever was over them. But I'm not seeing where in this section right here. I think I know what you're referring to. I just don't know where I'm looking at to get it. But I would say those who are over them.
But so you don't know who. So these particular men, who sent them so that they can give a report back to the men that sent them. You don't know who those people were.
I'm saying those who are over them. Are you saying the Sanhedrin, or are you saying
the religious leaders of Israel at that time?
Okay, I'm following you.
Right. So Caiaphas made a statement that it is in the writings that someone would come and die not for that nation, but also to the nations to the tribe that was scattered abroad. Are you familiar with Caiaphas when he made that statement?
Yeah, that's John 11. I know that one.
And so I'm arguing that these men were sent by the religious leaders in Jerusalem. The same terminology of the same terms are being used as John the Baptist describes these men. The Mashiyach is saying the same thing, and also the Dead Sea Scrolls are calling the people by the same name. The religious leaders in Jerusalem. So I'm arguing John the Baptist is calling these men the religious leaders and the ones that sent them, because they needed to report back to the people or the group that sent them, which were the religious leaders.
So
go ahead.
Oh no, so I was gonna say, I want to let you finish your thought. My bad. I'm gonna let you finish your thought. Well,
what I have been arguing is that you use words like hypocrisy, and I don't know how far you're looking at hypocrisy, but why would a person be given the title or being described as a generation of vipers, warn you of the damnation to come? I mean, who is he referring to? I mean, it was the Pharisees' responsibility, the religious leaders in Jerusalem, to make sure that peace was held in Jerusalem. No one can go out and teach anything opposite of the Pharisees, because if they did, this would now jeopardize their position as rulers in Israel. John the Baptist had to be stopped.
So would that Mashiyach, I was going to ask, so when we talk about hypocrisy, would that be on a moral basis or a doctrinal basis?
You can't separate them. Okay, doctrine shows the physical action. As a man thinketh, so is he. If a man is preaching and teaching hypocrisy, that means that his walk is also after his thinking, which is hypocrisy. So now, if John the Baptist was of a certain mindset and he was a harbinger, the forerunner for the Mashiyach, I'm arguing that John the Baptist again was a priest. He's a priest. And I don't think people are paying attention to that. John the Baptist is a Zadokite, a priest. This man is immersing and telling the people about a destruction to come and telling them that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. John the Baptist is teaching a doctrine that is in opposition of the Pharisees. So that would then make the doctrine of the Pharisees hypocrisy, lies. You're a generation of devils, is what you are. You are not teaching Torah. You're not.
So that's what I was gonna ask. So when the whole nation is seen as being hypocrites, is it because there's something wrong with our Torah, or is there something wrong with us and how we're keeping it?
Is the way that it's being perverted by the leaders who was in Moses' seat. This is the reason why do not, how can I say this? I'm going off of a Hebrew Matthew. Hebrew. The Hebrew Matthew is saying to do the works of Moses and not of the Pharisees and the sages. Don't do what they're doing. They're not teaching Torah. They're not.
I think that whole, like when we're looking at the word right here, Yomar, I'm looking at that like, yeah, the Yod, because the difference between the Shem Tov Matthew and the Matthew that's, you can find on Bible Hub that's in Hebrew is the Wah at the end. So if you take that Wah at the end, then it
We see
removes
the Y at the end of where?
on the Bible Hub, on the translation of the Hebrew New Testament, it was where how they get it to say day. How they get it to say day with the Wah.
Right, because in every Greek, now watch this now, in every, when I say every, I mean every, in every single Greek translation, it says they, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Shem Tov's Hebrew Matthew, it doesn't say that.
All right, and that's what I was gonna say, and I'm going just straight off the Shem Tov. But I was just bringing that point up to address the day. But with the Yod in front of right here, where you get the word Yomar, it's saying he says. But I think the emphasis is not on the he or the they at this point, but it is on the word say, because a martyr is to speak, like say.
Right.
So now, but everywhere in the New Testament, except a couple places in Hebrew, it always says as Moses has written, as Moses has written, as written in the law of Moses, written. But here it's specifically saying say, which is a oral reference. So if it's an oral reference, even if it's saying now all which he say to you keep and do, it's still implying an oral Torah that comes from Moses.
Right.
But that wouldn't be what's written. It'll be the oral Torah that was passed down through the transmission that came down to the Pharisees, who would be saying what Moses said.
But they wasn't saying it. See, that's the thing. You're correct. Moses, okay, you have Yomer, okay, Lakim, Shamarwu, we have Wa Ashawu. That Yod Aleph Mem Resh. Moses went up to the top of the mount at least 10 times. Let me share something with you. This is in the Apocrypha. I'm going to share something with you. It should be the nail in the coffin. This is 2nd Ezra, the 14th chapter, and I'm going to read from 1 to 5, no, 1 to 6. And it came to pass upon the 3rd day, I sat under an oak, and behold, there came a voice out of a bush and over against me, which is Ezra, and said, Ezra. And I said, Here I am, sovereign. And I stood upon my feet. Then said it to me, In the bush I did manifestly reveal myself unto Moses and talk with him when my people served in Egypt. Watch this. And I sent him and led my people out of Egypt and brought him up to the Mount of Sinai, where I held him by me a long season, and told him many wondrous things, and showed him the secrets of the times, 1, and the end, 2, and the commandments, 3, saying, These words shall thou declare, and these things are words that's Mashiyach. I have been arguing for years for just to say, just the literal 10 commandments does not take 40 days. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt love thy mother. Observe the Shabbat. That takes literally about 5 minutes. But Moses was up there for 40 days. I'm arguing that Moses did teach oral on Torah. That's my whole argument. I'm arguing that by the time Jeremiah is on the scene, the Father sent Jeremiah to Israel for a reason, because they were not keeping the oral traditions of Moses. They were not. And it got worse during the 1st century, where now we have, and even in the parable, it tells us even in the parable that the religious leaders were given a governing ship over the flock. The parable goes this way. Prophet after prophet after prophet came to the religious leaders and said, Repent, teshuvah, shuv. That's what they was teaching those that had guardianship over the vineyard. Then it gives the parable where now the religious leader said, here comes the heir. Let's kill him. And they did it. And the lion-ass Pharisees, they knew when the Mashiyach threw that parable, they knew that the Mashiyach was talking about them. And they tried to take up stones to kill him. We have direct conversation. We have parables, all pointing to the religious leaders who led Israel astray. That's my argument. But I do understand oral tradition. People believe that there's something, I guess, sacrificial or whatever is going to give them this divine revelation of just oneness with the sovereign. I can't argue that. If that's what a brother or sister believes, fine. I'm only sharing my position is that this whole thing about trying to do a literal Passover, and if you don't do it, you can make it up the 2nd month, is foolishness. This whole thing now is that I can't eat a cheeseburger is foolishness. This whole thing now is that I've done some injustice because I ate bread during the 7 days of unleavened bread. I've done some type of injustice. But again, that to each his own. I don't teach that. All of those sacrificial rituals are done. All of them. They're finished. Whoever wants to find the Ark of the Covenant and then rededicate it and throw blood on it and then put blood on their left ear and their right ear, on their big toe and their left toe, and then spin themselves around and do whatever that they need to do. And now I'm a rabbi, and now I'm a whatever they want to call it, whatever. That's fine. That is fine. I know for a fact that the book of Hebrews does not condone that behavior. It's either the Melchizedek order, the Mashiyach showing examples of that last meal that he had, which was not Passover. I don't know. Again, it's going to be up to the individual. But nah, me personally, I don't teach any salvation through any of those things that what the Pharisees was doing during the first century. No, those guys was idiots. And even Shaul, and again, it all depends how the person's going to look at it. Shaul said that all the things that he had obtained, he counted all worthless for the Mashiyach. That's what he said. So I do understand why a lot of the rabbis in the rabbinical teachings don't recognize the Mashiyach. Is because they don't recognize his supremacy over the Levitical Aaronic priesthood. They just don't. So that's what I got, my brother. That's what I have. But we've been rocking and rolling. We can talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to do a part 2 to this when it's going to take some time because I have a very busy schedule and I have to get up in about 6 hours to do what I do. So I just want to kindly thank everyone for tuning in. I'm just showing my understanding of it. I believe that I brought out scripture, Quran. I mean, and again, there's a lot more. I brought out addresses to the Quran community. I try to stay out of the book of Hebrews because I know that that's a sour apple in a lot of the rabbinical teachings. They don't want to talk about that. The book of Jubilees, they don't want to talk about that either. And they don't want to go deep into the Dead Sea Scrolls because, again, it points the finger at the Pharisees, the reason why this calamity came to the nation of Israel. They don't want to talk about that in its entirety. So again, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedule. I truly, truly do. And I'm going to have to end it now because we've been on now for almost 3 hours.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll talk about it at a later time.
Gotcha. Absolutely. For sure. For sure. Okay. So my peace and blessing to the family. I pray that everybody has a blessed rest of the day and the rest of the week. Stay safe, and we'll do this again at another time.
Okay. Shalom, shalom.
Okay. Shalom, shalom. Okay. And for all.